Good morning, and thank you for attending using InfoSparks to understand your housing market for Contra Costa Association Realtors. I want to welcome you. My name is Callie, and I'm going to be your instructor today. Couple of admin things. We have a screen up right now. If you're having any audio trouble, please make sure you check your audio settings. And we want to make sure that you feel free to submit any questions you may have. Due to the size of the audience is going to stay muted for the webinar, but you'll notice a QA, a question box where you can type in any questions you may have. Either myself during the webinar or one of my teammates that's also on today will be helping answer any questions that come up. And also, this webinar will be recorded, and you'll receive a recording of the webinar shortly after we wrap up today. So what will we be discussing? We're going to talk about your new member benefit provided to you by Contra Costa Association of Realtors, the InfoSparks tool. We're going to talk about some stats usage examples, a few caveats to keep in mind, and of course, some frequently asked questions. All right, so hopefully you are excited and ready to dive into InfoSparks. First question you might have is how you're going to access InfoSparks. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it. Right on your home screen, in your little blue box there, you do have an InfoSparks option now. When you click that, it'll take you directly into the tool. You also have under resources, the resources drop-down has an InfoSparks option, and also in the actions box for your listings, you also have an option there as well. Now, when you click any of those options, it'll take you into the InfoSparks tool that will look like this. Now, let's go over a little bit about what the InfoSparks tool is. It is an interactive stats tool that allows you to look at your entire MLS. It allows you to look at the data either market-wide in a specific area or a segment of the market. Couple of things here along the top, we have what we call the geography drop-down. Then you have your variables or your filters, the graph, and then your metrics along the bottom. And we're going to take a look at each one of these in depth. So starting up the top, you've got the geography drop-down. Now this allows you to look at a different segment of the market. You can search by city, county, zip code, subdivision. You could either scroll through the list and search for what you're looking for. You can type it into the box and it'll populate all the different options here. Or you can use these boxes down below to help narrow down your search. Maybe you're only wanting to look at cities or only wanting to look at zip codes. There's also this My Areas option, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So when you log into InfoSparks, it's going to automatically take you to the entire MLS, so you're looking at everything market-wide. Then you come down here to your variables or filters. This allows you to look at different things like property type, price range, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, and sales type. On each of these, you can have the default that's set to all options, or you could select just one. You can also select multiple, and it'll allow you to look at just those property types in this example. And if you click the arrows, it actually will allow you to break those options out. So you've got some different ways that you can look at the data. Now, it also, some of these, has the option for custom. You'll notice it here on price range and square footage. What this does is if you're trying to look at price ranges and maybe the default price ranges for each area aren't quite meeting what you need, you have the option to add some customization here. So we could look at, maybe we want to change this to 599. Let's go 600,000. Maybe we want to go 699. 700,000. And then for this last one, we'll just put in 800,000. Now you can see it gives you the options that were there. And you'll notice those options here as well. As soon as I click done, these are going to change. So you'll see that right there. So now I can look at these customized ranges. And again, this is available for your price range or your square footage. We talked about being able to select multiple options within a filter. You can also select multiple going across. So you'll see each time I select an option, it changes the graph down below. And the more options I select, you'll notice the chart gets a little more sporadic or larger spikes and valleys. That's because I'm narrowing down that pool of listings more and more with each click. So now you'll see I start to have even more of those, and now I've hit something that appears to not exist. It looks like there was one listing back in July of 2023 for this, but nothing since then. You could also reach times where you'd see this, where you see the graph, but then there's nothing here for a few months. Sometimes you can even hit options that'll say something like this: there's no data available to display for the given criteria. Now, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the graph or that you've broken anything, so fear not. All that means is that we've narrowed down this pool of listings so much that it can't populate a viable chart for this. Now, the big caveat here is that your CMA through your MLS is a great tool for when you're wanting to compare one listing to another or one listing to a few listings. The InfoSparks tool is meant to be used to find trends in the market. So it is a great accompaniment to your CMA. The InfoSparks tool should not be used to replace your CMA. So you might want to back a few of these options out. You'll see that the graph will start populating again. And the more options you have, the more the graph will look like a little bit smoother of a graph, that kind of thing. And now we can see some real trends here. So something to keep in mind: CMA, great for one or two. The InfoSparks tool, great to see the trends. The InfoSparks tool is built using aggregate data, and that's why this happens. It's not listing level data, so nothing that you do within this tool will pull listing IDs or addresses or anything like that. It's going to give you larger aggregate data. All right. So the other thing we can do within the tool is that you can compare multiple areas to each other. So we looked at having filters on this one for the entire MLS, but I can also click add an area, and we could add more areas in here. Maybe I want to look at Concord. Let's look at Walnut Creek. Nope, you got to type in the box. Let's look at Walnut Creek, and let's add one more. Maybe we look at, let's look at San Ramon. Okay, so now what we've done is we can see this data. We're still looking at the property types, all ranges, all bedrooms, etc. We are looking at the median sales price, and now we can compare each one of these to each other. So we're looking at the entire MLS is your blue line, Concord is the green, Walnut Creek is the gray, and San Ramon is over here in the orange. So this allows you to look at multiple areas to each other. Now, if I take out the entire MLS, you can see the graph can overlap sometimes. It can add some confusion, like if you had something like this, your lines are really close together. This could be hard to see all the data points, and especially if you're sharing this out in a chart, this might really be hard for the person looking at it to be able to see what you're showing. So while we can compare up to 4 areas, we highly recommend doing 2 areas, either a location to the entire MLS or one location to another. So if I took out the entire MLS here, now you can see your graph is a little bit better. Maybe we wanted to take out Concord as well. Now we're just comparing Walnut Creek to San Ramon. This is a much more user-friendly graph. You can see the clear data points, and it just makes it a little bit more user-friendly. The other thing to note is when you're on one tab and add filters, Those filters are going to stay with that tab. So I've created some filters on the San Ramon tab. Now, if I go back to the Walnut Creek, you'll see that there were no filters added. So the filters do not populate to all of the graphs. So a couple things here, you could create some different filters for each tab if you wanted to be able to compare what is happening there. You could also just want to make sure that you're looking at whichever tab has the filters you inputted, if that's what you were trying to stay with. All right, so I'm going to come back to entire MLS just to have that data available. So we looked at the geography filters, we looked at the property type filters, the variables is what we call them. So now let's talk about some of the metrics along the bottom here. So we've got sale price, new listings, home for sale, pending sales, closed sales, days on market, month supply, percentage of list price, percentage of price per square foot, and dollar volume. So let's go through some of these and kind of look at some of the other features of the InfoSparks tool. Now let's go to pending sales. And we can take a look up here. So we're looking at this in a line chart. We're looking at it for 3 years, and we're looking at it in a monthly view. With the timeline, you can actually select as little as 1 year and as many as the maximum, which in your market goes all the way back to 2009. And we're looking at this in a monthly view right now. So this allows you to really see the seasonality of the market, whether that's true seasonality or different events within your history of the market. So things like I was looking here. So your December of 2009 was fairly typical, low in the market. It was starting to come up here, and you'll see this nice little peak here in April of 2010, and then a sudden drop. So this can be connected with the first-time homebuyer tax credit that was available in 2010. Homes had to be homes had to be closed the first half of that year. So we see this in a lot of markets where the listings were very high, whether it's pending sales, closed sales, those kinds of things. We can see that spike in early 2010 and then that sudden drop off for the rest of the year. You might be able to, with you knowing the area as well as you do, you might notice other things here where you can connect these to history, whether it's natural disasters like fires or earthquakes or anything like that. You can see trends here. I think we all know what this spike is. We had, coming out of our seasonality pretty normally. December of 2019, we dipped. We started to come back up like a normal year, and then COVID hit. And a lot of our markets went into kind of hibernation as we were waiting for the states to decide that real estate was essential. And so once that happened, we can see that spike here where business picked back up. And you could see some elevated numbers through the COVID time period and after, where there was a lot of people moving into the city, out of the city, those kinds of things. And then now we're starting to get to maybe more of a normal seasonality. You're a little bit lower than compared to pre-COVID, but you're starting to see some of that more normal seasonality of the market. Busier in the summer, slower in the winters. So the monthly view is wonderful for this and really allows you to see that. But you also have the option to see a rolling 3, rolling 6, or rolling 12. Now with the rolling 12, what this does is it annualizes the data. So instead of each data point being 1 month, like it is in the monthly view, now we're looking at 12 months of data. So it's the current month that's reporting. So in this case, December 2024, plus the 11 months prior for a total of 12 months. So now when we do this, we can really see the trend of the market. Now you can still sometimes see some of those spikes or changes due to events that might have happened. Obviously here we can see the impact of COVID, the numbers going down, and then that sudden spike. You can still see some of that, but it annualizes that data and gives you a little bit better idea of what's happening trend-wise. So we can see, as early as August 2023, you all were still kind of slowing down, dipping down. It looks like you've got some upward trajectory here, so that's reassuring. And you could see if you come back in the next couple of months if that's going to continue or where that might be going. Now we we can't predict the future, but this does let us see again those trends that kind of give us an idea of what might be happening. We also, once we're in here, we can do things like splitting out some of these different properties. So if we do this, then we can really start to see some of these other lines here are the different property types. And you can change from the line chart view to a bar graph. Now, this is, I think, a really great way to visualize the data. When you'll notice when we were looking at this in the line, your lines here, there's some major differences between the detached homes and condominiums and townhouses, which you would expect. But now when we see it in the bar graph, it just helps us visualize that a little bit better. Now with the bar graph, it only goes back as many as 3 years, and it can be as few as 1 year if you only wanted to see the current year. But you can go back as much as 3, and now you have a comparison for townhouses from 2022, 2023, and 2024. It's going to give you the current numbers above the graph and then the percentage of change below the graph. So now we can see between 2022 and 2023, you did have a decrease of 41% in your detached homes pending sales, but now you can see in 2024, we've really taken an upturn there, and you can visualize that really easily looking at the bar graph. Now let's look at maybe some other metrics. We can look at new listings. Same thing, we can look at it as a line graph or a bar graph. New listings is really good because you can really see the seller activity in the market. Are people putting their homes on the market, or are they still kind of in that golden handcuff situation where maybe interest rates are still too high, there's nowhere else to go, so they're holding back and not putting their home on the market because maybe they don't have a home that they can find to move into. So you can see that seasonality because we're back to the monthly view. You can see in December of 2022, you were back in your low for the winter time frame, and now your May, July, June was up, peaking like a normal seasonality, still lower than you have been previously. But if we look at this in a larger time frame, yeah, still lower than you were before COVID, but starting to see some more normal seasonality of the market. And you can also see this last December didn't dip as low as the one before, so that's always good. And you've got a trajectory that I would say maybe you're going to keep continuing through those summer months because it's only March. And then it'll be interesting to see what happens through the summer, spring, summer, and fall. So being able to see the seller activity on the market, being able to tell kind of what might be happening in the future. Another thing I want to point out is this section over here to the right where you see March 2024. You see the different filters we have on. So we have detached family, condominium, and townhouse. You can see the current numbers, and this again is for March of 2024. We report through the end of the month prior. So we've got 585 detached new listings in March, and that was up 1.2% from the March of 2023. So this is in comparison to the same month the year prior. Condominiums have gone down a little bit, townhouses have gone up. So you can really start to see some of those breakthroughs there. Let's look at days on market. This one's always interesting. We can see, again, detached condominium townhouse. We can see what they're looking like. So detached homes, the median days on market is 11. Condominiums, the median is 17, and townhomes is a median of 11. So on a lot of the options, if the filter has median and average, it's going to start out at median. Statistics love median versus average because median can't be swayed as much as an outlier can affect the average. So for the median, if you take 100 listings, you're looking at the one dead center to try to determine what that median is. Average, you're taking that same 100, adding them all up and dividing them by 100. So if you have an outlier that's been on the market for 100 days, that's really going to skew that average number. But you can, if you want to, look at it as an average. You can change it here and you'll see now detached homes 24 days, condominiums 40, and townhomes 25. So quite the difference looking at that between a median and an average. We can also look at month supply. This one is always an interesting one to me. So I'm going to actually expand this to the maximum so we can kind of see. And let's just look at detached homes to kind of clean this up a little bit. So right now, your month supply for detached homes is 1.2. Now, if we actually looked at all property types, you're still 1.3. So relatively low. When we look at NAR, the national average they're saying is about 3.2. So that meaning if no other homes hit the market, inventory would run out in approximately 3.2 months, right? So I looked at this and I saw your 1.3. And I do know the area for the Contra Costa market a little bit. Have family that grew up there, so got to spend summers and things like that there. And you know, some might say, "Oh, that's pretty low." In your market, that actually is relatively what you have all been working with for 10 years easily, maybe even a little bit longer. Back here, coming out of the housing crisis, um, the crash, you had a lot more inventory sitting on the market, but that was to be expected with all the foreclosures and short sales and any of those kinds of things. And that came down to, you've hit some pretty low lows. You've had some 0.3 here in December of 2021, things like that, but your 1.3 appears to be fairly normal in your market. Now, does that mean you don't wish there was more? You might. Obviously, more homes on the market means more potential people buying and selling, but you know, it's not an abnormal number for you. And you can see that, you can visualize that. Someone new coming into this market might say, "Oh my gosh, there's only 1.3 month supply. That's really, really low." And you can say, "Actually, that's pretty common for this area. We have our ebbs and our flows. You can see the seasonality of that here too. So it's a great way to visualize and be able to explain something that's happening in your market. We can also look at percentage of list price, which is always another fun one to look at. So again, you can view this as a median or an average. So you can see things like in the market, is it a seller's market or a buyer's market? This is a good metric to use for that because you can really start to see how much homes are getting of the list price. So back here in 2009, 2010, you still had times of 100%, but you also had dips of like that 98%. So maybe then it was a little softer of a market for the buyers. They could kind of feel like they won a little bit in the deal here. But then you look at these numbers and you can see you had quite a streak of, 104 to 109%. That means the median home was getting at least 9% over the list price, which is huge for the seller side. So obviously a really good time in the seller's market. But even now, I mean, you're still at 102, 10, or 100.9. So you're still in more of a seller's market, and you can see that visualized here. If we look at average, it doesn't change that much in this one. So you can still have that spike of 109 and 112. So still a very strong seller's market because of the percentage of list price that's coming in on your listings. So great way to see that. And you can also see, if you look at the sale price, you can visualize those same types of things. Here you had, June of 2012, you were sitting at a median of about 400,000, 406, 501, right? So, okay numbers, but now you can look at you've almost doubled that as your median sales price for your entire MLS. So when you compare that with things like the percentage of list price, you can see that it's a seller's market in a lot of ways. You have more money coming in for the seller. You have a higher percentage of what they're getting for that list price. Overall, the properties are just worth more or will be sold for more than they might have been 10 years ago. So great way to use these metrics to be able to visualize what's happening. Now, what if I had a chart that I wanted to share out, maybe I've created something here to look at some of these home types, and I'm looking at the sale price, and I want to be able to show either a colleague or a community member or a client, look at the prices, look at what they're getting. Isn't this great? Let's talk about this. So you have a couple of different ways that you can share this. You can print it by clicking the print button. It's going to give you a PDF. It'll take just a second to populate here. It's going to give you a PDF that's going to have this chart on it. It has some agent branding on it. It's also got the Contra Costa Association of Realtors on here. It's got the area that we're looking at, the date that we pulled the information. It's got exactly what it is that we're looking at, including any filters you've put on it. So we can see here it's detached condominium townhouse. And then it's got the citation at the bottom, so you can always see where you've gotten this information from. You could either email that out or attach it to email, print it out, whatever you'd like to do. You also have the share button here. Now this is going to allow you to either share a static chart or a live chart. Static would be maybe you want to share out information about inventory. You want it to be the same next week or next month or next year as what you're sharing right now. So think about it in lines of maybe a newspaper article. You can click static, and then that's never going to change. If you go back to it later, it's going to be the exact same. But you can also click live, which means it is going to be updating as the InfoSparks tool updates. So we update every night through the end of the prior month. So again, right now we're reporting for March of 2024. At the end of April, when it rolls into May, we'll start reporting on April. So if you share it as a live chart, as we add more months would be on the chart. This is really good if you want to do maybe a social media post or send it out as an email. You can click that. You would take this entire snippet of URL, pop it into whatever you were using. We can open it up here in a new window so you can see it. Now, as the PDF, I rolled over the graph and nothing happened. Now, if I roll over the graph, you can see that I can see the different data points on here. It still has a lot of the same information. It's got the agent branding, the association logo, what it is, what we're sharing out, all of that. You've got the options here to share it onto any social media platforms. If you click the plus, it gives you all of the different options. If anybody's still involved with MySpace, you can even share it there. So post this on your social media, share it out, whatever you'd like to do. But maybe you want to add this onto a website. We have an embedded option. This will allow you to put it on a blog, a website, anything like that. You would pick if you want to do an image, more like that PDF, or an interactive, more like the chart I just showed you. You can select the different sizes. I can share this out now. I would take the entire snippet of code to be able to put it on your website. For this, I'm just going to select the URL so that I can show you what it looks like here. Give that just a second to pop up. Now you can see I would have this little graph. Again, it's got some agent branding on it. It's got all the same information to let you know what it is you're sharing. Now imagine this on a website or in a blog with all of your web content around it. And this would just be embedded within that website. The last option you have here is a CSV file. Now this will allow you to grab a CSV file with the raw data. Again, this is aggregate data. It is not listing level data. So you would be able to select this, copy it, maybe be able to create your own infographics or, use it for an article, whatever you might want to do. It just allows you to kind of get those raw data point data. All right. Now we can look at maybe you come back later on and you can't remember what it was I said about what this was over here or the sharing or anything like that. We've got a couple of different resources for you. You can click the question mark. It's going to pop up some tips. So it talks about the metrics down below, the variable filters up above. It talks about quick facts and tells you here it's that snapshot of information, the graphing, the timelines, all of that. There's good information in there. You also have the user manual and frequently asked questions. It's got some good resources in here. It's got a video, much like what we're watching today. You've got the email for your support there at Contra Costa Association of Realtors. And then as you scroll down, it's got a lot of different tips, tricks, all of that. Maybe you wanted to come here and talk about the variables and see what those were. Here we have the definitions of the variables. We also have the definitions of the metrics. It talks about sharing. I'm using the menu bar here on the left to just be able to click into these different sections, but it talks about sharing and how to go through that process. It also does talk about the shared chart expiration. Charts that are shared out need to be visited so often. So it's always a good rule of thumb every so often, especially if you have it on a website or something like that. Log into your InfoSparks using your MLS and then go into the tool and access your graph that way. So you can scroll through here, use that menu bar, all of that. We looked at the shared charts. This is where the information for the agent branding comes from, the profile tab. When you click on this, the only information you cannot change is your name. That comes directly from the MLS. But all of the different information you can update a logo or a headshot. You can update all of your agent information. Maybe you've gotten a new cell phone number, you can put that in here, your office location, all of that. And then you'd want to make sure that you click update profile at the end. And that will change it for all of your shared charts as you move forward. We also talked about in here, this My Areas. So what we can do is if there's not an area that you wanted to search in, maybe you wanted to narrow it down a little bit, you can use the My Areas to create custom areas to search for. So maybe you're in here and you want to click these lines in. Now I've selected an area. Once I've closed it, I can resize it. You also have the option, if you didn't want to draw a box like that, you could draw a circle. It gives you the options to remove anything. So maybe you made a mistake there. I can recreate here. I'm going to make a little location here at this mountain view and see what we get. So now once I have an area that I like and that I want to use, I can click save and I can name this. Now, you do want to make sure that you name it something that'll be understandable when you share this out, because it will show up on the shared charts, as we discussed earlier. And this tells you we've defined an area of 8.5 square miles, and it includes 11,926 listings, which is wonderful. You do have a limit of 270 square miles, so you can't do something so big, but this is a good size, and this is a great amount of listings. Much like when we narrowed down the graph at the beginning, we don't want to narrow down our area so much that we only have maybe 10, 20, 30 listings. We want a lot of listings because that is back from the beginning of your history. So in this case, 2009. So now once we've selected that area, we can click See Stats. Give it just a second to see, to pull it up. So now you can see you've got the mountain view here. Now I can take this data and break it down like I have any other way. Slice it and dice it with all the variables and the metrics and all of that. If I wanted to come in and find it again, I'm going to go to My Areas and I'm going to have the options here, and I can see, we've tested this multiple times, so we've got a couple of different options here. I would recommend you stay away things from like test 2, testing, that kind of thing. But you want to name it, like here we've got Berkeley and Mountain View. Those would be great for you to use and be able to share out on those charts. Okay, so I'm going to check the question box, see if anything has come in that needs to be answered. And we've got just a few more slides we're going to go through here. All right, looks like we're doing good on the questions. So we talked about how to access the tool already. So we talked about the geography, the housing characteristics, the chart type and time calculations, and the metrics. We covered the custom ranges and custom square foot. We talked about making a chart and being able to share those charts out. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to get those in. So let's look at some ways you might use some of these. On your website, adding a chart in to talk about different areas that you're working with, or maybe different things you're talking about, like maybe square footage in your area or something like that, and being able to break down what's available and talking to that. You could go property specific. Maybe you were wanting to focus on condominiums in your area, different housing markets. You could talk about the community spotlight, I think is always interesting. And if you wanted to focus on maybe one city or one county or something like that, and being able to share this out with some kind of community partner like a chamber of commerce, and being able to help provide some information about those areas, and having someone be able to go and look at the graph, I think is always a great resource. You could do a monthly stats update. Pop this into your website and have it updating with the latest information. Um, you can also bookmark those when you create it as a social media post or an email. You could bookmark that URL and then always go back to that same area. That would really be beneficial in something like this where you are wanting to do a monthly stats update. But also, if you just are working in certain areas, it's great to be able to have that information at your fingertips. We talked about how often the InfoSparks tool updates. It updates nightly through the end of the month prior. If you're someone that likes to look at the data at the very beginning of the month, be cautious of that. Sometimes because of late entries or late status changes, those numbers at the beginning of the month can really change. So just something to kind of keep in mind. And then we do change history. We talked about sharing a chart out as a live chart versus a static chart. If you do it as a live chart and you've quoted something about a statistic in the past, that may change as you go back and revisit it, because as information becomes available to us, we do update it that way. So that's where your static chart talking about inventory kind of comes in handy. We talked about those time calculations, keeping in mind if you're looking at the monthly for that seasonality of the market, or are you looking at the rolling 12 so that you can see the trends? Some frequently asked questions, again, how to access the tool. You've got the access point right on your home page of your Paragon site. You also have it under the resources tab and within your action box when you're in your listings. If you're pulling data and comparing it against the MLS data and you're seeing that there's some inconsistencies, something to keep in mind is, again, when we're pulling the data, maybe mathematical calculations or different filters that we're using, different things like that. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to your MLS. If they don't know the answer, they know how to get a hold of us, and we'll help look into anything that might be of any concern. And then scrubbing algorithm, we do some minor data scrubbing. Things like days on market must be between 0 and 900. Bedrooms must be between 0 and 20. If we have a listing that says it's got 200 bedrooms, we're going to question that. So we'll scrub that from the bedroom filter or variable, but the rest of the listing would still be within that data. We are only using MLS data. We don't pull from other county records or assessor sites or anything like that. The days on market are calculated just as they are in your MLS. If you have any questions, again, remember that frequently asked questions, the question mark in the upper right-hand corner, using your MLS as a resource always, and then we're always here as well. And then, can you post these reports? Yes, yes, yes. We want you to share out this information. That's the whole point of having the tool, is that you now have this resource to be able to share the data out. We talked a lot about how to share it out. The only ask that we have is that you make sure you cite your sources. Just as you did in school, it's important to keep those sources there so that people know where that information came from. And that's both showing time and Contra Costa Association of Realtors. So it's important to cite those sources. All right, I will stay on for a few minutes in case there's any other questions. We did have one about the recording of this session. Yes, we are recording this, and shortly after we wrap up, within an hour or so, everybody that registered for the webinar will receive a recording. We'll also send one to the association so that they have it on record for any future new member trainings or anything like that. So we'll make sure you have lots of resources to have that available. All right, feel free to get any more questions in that you may have. and I'll stay on for just a moment, but otherwise, we're done with the presentation today. I hope you all have a fantastic Thursday, and thank you so much again for joining us. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in. I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about InfoSparks, and we hope to see you again. Bye.